Hey folks, thanks for joining me today. Today's podcast is with my guest, Christine MacDonald. And she is a former stripper or exotic dancer from the late 80s into the 90s. Now, she started this at the age of 19, and it was all due to the fact that when she was a young teenager, she had a severe and rare skin condition that affected her face. Over 80% of her face was scarred. Now, because of that, there's trauma involved. And oftentimes with trauma, we cope with it by going into drugs or sex and things like that. And in Christine's case, this was the admiration or adoration of men being attracted to her because she was developed and had a nice figure. So that's not what this podcast is really about. It's about the power that she gained, the self-confidence that she wants to share with everybody out there, that you can be empowered and you can learn to do things and you can stand up on your own 2 feet. So we're going to go over her life, how she overcame her trauma, and how she became this powerful individual. So please stick around and listen to the podcast. If you're ready, let's go.
What if someone told you that you could learn the secret to happiness or success? Maybe you have an interest in mental health or the unknown, or even the desire to communicate with the dead. These are the real stories and encounters from the real people. And here's your host, Chuck Tuck.
Please remember to be a responsible pet owner and have your pet spayed or neutered.
How is social media affecting you positively and then that negatively? Take a
Two
deep breath.
sides to every coin, right? I know. Well, it's interesting because we meaning us human beings, we have the choice to look at things through a healthy lens or through a toxic lens. And I think the older we get, the more we realize that we have more power than we realize. For me personally, I should say, when I get caught up in social media, very easy to do. I mean, I started my TikTok page a little over a year ago to garner attention for my book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an addict. I'm in recovery, but I'm an addict. That DNA is in there. It's the wiring in my brain. So social media lends itself to that very well. And that can be a good thing if I'm in the algorithm of good news of the day and feel good stories and I'm sitting there crying tears of joy. And then on the other side of the coin, there's the toxicity and all of those things. Well, right now, given the news of the world, it is very harmful for me because there's no off switch. And so, a perfect example with TikTok, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I just got off work, and all of a sudden it's 10 o'clock at night, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I haven't even had dinner. I've been on TikTok this whole time. So it affects me in both ways, and I have to remember to rein it in. I have the control. I can simply close my laptop, get off the apps.
Yep. That's the thing. An addict or being addicted, a lot of times we think of it as, an alcoholic addict or something else, and then it became a sex addict. But now it's social media. But an addiction can almost be really anything. And the one word that you really said that we all really need to understand is choice. We
Yes.
do have a choice. So, but that's the hard part too, is making that choice to say no or whatever it might be. It's
And
hard.
it also depends on your background too. So if you were raised in an environment where you weren't really allowed to watch something like whether it be an adult movie or whatever, and then you have that part of you that like just has to know, that can contribute to it as well. But the choice and if you want to link in feeling protective of your mental health, you need to make choices to protect your mental health. In other words, like if you know it's going to affect you, what can you do to alleviate your prospective pain? Well, stay off the internet, right?
I that question everybody says or asks when they're playing a game. If you were stranded on a desert island, what are the three things that you would want to have or need? I know my one thing, and it's my internet. So, am I addicted? I don't know, but it's so hard, I think, too, to be able to tell that line of have I crossed it? Am I addicted to it, or is it a habit, or do I just do it too much? It's
hmm I can completely agree with you on that. And it's a very interesting question because the barometer for addiction can be different for other people. But the textbook answer, and I'm not an expert, is if your life becomes unmanageable
Mhm.
due to your um, addiction, for lack of a better word. Let's just say you have a slight addiction, or you're just really into the internet. I don't know. But if your life becomes unmanageable because of something, then you might want to look at, your actions and things like that.
Yeah,
So,
you're absolutely right about that. I mean, it's a situation where, um, say you get a new girlfriend or new boyfriend or whatever it is, the internet, and your
mm,
friends are saying, "Hey, let's go out." Nah, I'm busy, but you're doing that thing. Then they ask you again.
mm-hmm,
No, I'm busy. And then they ask, and then if your friend says, "Hey, you're like avoiding us. You never go out anymore. What's up?" That's when you need to really look at yourself and go, "Oh, crap." You know,
yeah. And
I
those are good friends to
yes,
call you out. Hmm.
yep. And you know, if you have that addictive type of personality, and if somebody has said that to you, don't try not to get mad and say "butt out." It's none of your business. It's like you said. It's a good thing that you've got friends like that to point those
Hmm.
things out, so you can kind of stand back and look at yourself from the outside and say, "Oh, wow, you know what?
Hmm.
It's been 5 months since I've gone out to see those guys, and the only thing I've been doing is making an excuse to stay at home to be on the internet, to just be
Do a
around.
bunch of cocaine in your apartment in the
Yeah, do a
80s?
bunch of coke or something. Yeah, or you're drinking alone." But George Thorogood did have a good song about that.
Bad to the bone. Oh yeah, I drink alone. That's
Alone.
funny. That I used to, that's funny you mentioned George Thorogood. I used to dance to Bad to the Bone. Do you know that song?
Oh yeah.
Bad. Yeah. And talking about addiction and wondering if you are or not. Well, let's just talk about cocaine for a second because I grew up in the 80s and was a spicy dancer from 1987 to 1996. So I was in the heyday of the glamour drug, right? You thinking, there's a caste system in my opinion, when it comes to drugs. And so like you've got your heroin camp, which is just needles in the arms, people living under bridges, which is of course such a bias because anybody can be addicted to anything. And then you've got your crack, people that smoke crack. And then you've got your cocaine. So for me, cocaine was the glamour drug. But I used to tell myself, if I don't do it by myself, I'm not an addict. And then I started doing it by myself. And then I would say, well, if I don't do it on the weekdays, and on like Monday through Friday, and just party on the weekends, I'm not an addict. And then I started partying on the weekdays. I said, well, if I don't do it during the day, I kept moving the goalposts. And then finally realizing, okay, this might be a problem. But it took a long time. I thought I was just a party girl, honestly, until my early 30s.
And yeah, it's the 80s till now. It's really different. Like I said, the party drug then, White Line. Remember that song? So like
Oh, yes.
Coke.
Yes.
So, but again, going back to addiction and stuff, and especially with the drugs, it's if you find yourself doing what we've been talking about, alienating yourself, changing your life behaviors, you you may have an addiction. And
Yeah.
if you don't know, I mean, ask somebody as well. Has my behavior changed? Am I not doing things? What am I doing?
Hmm.
And ask them to be honest. So,
Yeah, and also recognize that there's no shame in our game. Like when I say our, I'm talking about the community of people in recovery or people who are trying to recover or in full-blown addiction. There's no shame in it. It
yeah.
is a disease of the brain. People think that it's a choice. Won't even get into that conversation because it's kind of like when you're at the Thanksgiving dinner table, don't talk religion, don't talk politics, don't talk addiction. because people will have arguments about it. But there is no shame in saying that you're an addict. So, like you said, if you want to ask somebody in your circle of trust, hey, call me out on this if you're seeing something that's might need attention. There's no shame in saying, you're right, I'm an addict, I need help,
Yeah.
you know? In fact, it's very noble.
And the first person that needs to say it is yourself.
Yep.
You know?
And by the way, this is water.
Oh, okay.
I drink water from a wine glass because why not? Celebrate yourself.
Oh, I like that. Why not?
Why not?
Uh, so let's kind of rewind and go way back to, we'll start like 1986, right before you're really
Hmm.
getting into the whole thing. So you're in Waikiki, you're in this paradise, beautiful.
Hmm.
We are all at that time young and feeling good. How and why did you get into, well, I'll just say stripper dancing,
The sex work industry.
sex work
Yeah.
industry? So,
Hmm. How
how
did it happen?
did it happen?
I was on the beach in Waikiki. I was 19 years old and with one of my dear, dear friends. And that's an interesting story. You'll have to get the book to really learn all about Angela. But Angela was dating the same person that I was dating, but she was living in LA at the time.
Mm,
And that's all I'm going to say. We ended up becoming great friends, kicked the guy out, and then she moved in because, girl's girl.
yeah.
So we're on the beach. She's this beautiful, perfect, gorgeous blonde. She gets approached to do a wet t-shirt contest. The guy has, remember, it's the late 80s, really, really tight curls, mullet. What was he wearing? Hot pink Speedos. I mean, it was like something out of a movie. It was so funny. He was a character. And he's got these flyers for booze cruises and all these things and comes up to my girlfriend Angela and says, "Hey, you want to make $100?" And she says, "Tell me more. How do I make $100? Like, what's the catch?" And he says, "Well, just if you enter this wet t-shirt contest, you have a chance at making $100." So she looked at me, she looked at the guy, and she says, "What do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, do it. Why not? I'll go there and support you." She says, "I'll do it if she does it." She's talking to Mr. Speedo. And he said, "Okay." And so we ended up going to this bar called the Lollipop Lounge in Waikiki. And from that night, which by the way, I won the contest,
Mm, hmm.
random, I found my home in the what's the word I'm looking for? When you're desensitized
Yeah.
to the bullying and all the bad things, a little bit of a background with my story. I had a horrific skin disease, tons of scars on my face. I've had 9 surgeries since then just to remedy the scarring. So my self-worth was at an all-time low. So that evening, when I got my first dollar bill on stage, 100% just for how I looked, I was home. I was home. This is validating my beauty. And so for someone who's so young, right? 19 years old, no self-esteem, somebody giving you a dollar bill for how you looked. And then of course the cocaine factor. That's all I could think about. Money, beauty, or what I thought was beauty, right? The superficial stuff, and drugs. And it was all like, tell me another job that you can do cocaine and have a beer and make hundreds of dollars. I was sold.
Can I jump in and say that that is the one thing I think that has not changed and will never change over the millennia is that self, uh, now I lost the word that I want to use. But if we have that lower or low self-esteem and
Hmm. Hmm.
somebody gives you money or pays attention to you, it validates. It
Yes.
validates you and you feel that you have self-worth where
Hmm.
it's a false sense of security. It's
Security. Yeah, I get that. I
so
get that.
that's the one thing that just is not ever going to change.
Hmm.
Sorry I interrupted. I just wanted to
No,
throw.
no, not at all. Not at all. And agree with you, especially in this. I mean, there was no internet back in the day. There was no filter. And now, what I think about, and the reason why I wanted to share my sport story specifically for young people and, women, I think, and men too, but I think mostly women with the makeup filters and all these things, there's a false idea of what beauty is.
Yes.
So if anybody is struggling, thinking that they need to have the perfect nose, or I've been reading things about have you heard about this? Women are removing the fat underneath their cheekbones to get that hollowed in look. It's called buccal fat removal. I think it's Buccal. So things like that, just to sort of fit in and to feel beautiful, it's just reached a whole new level, you know?
Yeah.
So you're right. You're absolutely right. It doesn't go away.
Well, women, men and women, but I think when we're talking about the beauty, women have to really realize that a lot of this stuff is just a trend. Because if you think
Hmm.
back, okay, so you're going to go back to, we used to, we guys in my age bracket and older, a woman with an hourglass figure, full figure
Mm,
hourglass figure, that was beauty. Oh, no, that's fat now. That's like, it
yeah.
can't look like that, but that's what it was. And then it goes to this straight up and down pole kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, we have Barbie, which was, and then back to now again, but the Barbie now, it's a small waist and a large bust kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
not.
then who's making the rules too? Like where does it come from? Like who is saying what's beautiful or not? Because if you fly to India, right, or I can't remember the country where large women are sexy, very large women, and I want to say it's somewhere in India, but I could be mistaken. But I was watching a documentary on that, and I thought it was really interesting. Like who's to say what's beautiful or not? But I think in this country, 100%. It ebbs and flows. I mean, just you can look at makeup trends, right? And you can see that the women in the 20s had those pencil thin eyebrows. And then guess
Mhm.
what comes back around in the 90s? Pencil thin eyebrows. What's trending right now? Groucho Marx eyebrows, the Brooke Shields eyebrow from the 80s. So
Yes.
you're right, it just ebbs and flows, and that buccal fat removal is permanent, which
Oh,
is
wow.
freaky to me that women are surgically in making these changes that you can't reverse.
Oh.
Yeah.
Um, and probably this is just my assumption. It almost seems like it's more Western culture, that the
Yeah.
women and men putting maybe false sense of a portrayal of something beautiful. I'm saying men as well. Men
Hmm.
making women think that that's how they have to look, but women thinking that that's how they have to look because they're looking at whatever it is, magazines and things. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the way it is in the Eastern culture, but I have heard that I think it's China that some of the women are starting to do that now that with the cat eye things or
Oh, I've heard that.
yeah,
Yes.
and they're changing the shape of the face. But
Hmm.
anyhow, back to the 80s and Waikiki Beach and that wet t-shirt contest, you win. Now you're getting dollar bills and then more dollar bills. Um,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that put you on a I imagine that put you on a natural high because, you know, you're getting
Yes.
acknowledged for your beauty, like you said. And then, um, did you get into drugs at that time?
More so.
Mm.
More so. I got into drugs after starting at age 16.
Oh.
My skin disease started at 13, 14. I
Hmm.
had my first surgery, which was under general anesthetic, called a dermabrasion, not to be confused with microdermabrasion. These are old-fashioned, antiquated surgeries that I don't even think they do anymore. But what they do with this surgery is they put you under general anesthetic and they grind your skin down using a wire bristle or brush. And so your entire face is a scab and you cannot see the sun. And in fact, that's in my book. I have photos from that surgery. But so that can give you an idea of where my mindset was, right? I just wanted to escape. I wanted to numb my pain. But because of the surgery, painkillers, right? So that was amazing. Like, oh, all I have to do is pop this pill. So I got into pills a little bit, but it was hard to get back in the day. I have to say, cocaine was easier to get. And with cocaine, I got the confidence that I
Yeah.
was lacking. And it's all superficial, it's not organic, but that's when it started. And then when I found this career in the sex work industry where nobody batted an eye when you're doing cocaine. So, yeah. So to answer your question, yes, it just increased
Mm.
exponentially. And I was dating a dealer, so it was very
Helpful and
convenient.
handy. Yeah. Um, would you say in your guesstimation, um, then and now, perhaps that um, majority of the gals, women that get into the sex industry, dancing, have a lower self-esteem of themselves?
Tricky question because I
Yeah.
don't want to speak for them.
Hmm.
I will say that in my experience, the women that find the pole, the women that find that life, have survived something, whether it's trauma related to sexual abuse or whatever their journey is, whatever their road is, it's knocked them down emotionally in a way that maybe they're not even aware of, right? I've also worked with women that really, to me, seemed like they had their heads on straight and they just needed to make some extra money. I'll never forget a kindergarten teacher. She was so sweet. She didn't do drugs. She didn't even drink. She just came into work, did her shift, made tons of money, and left. I was so in awe of her. I'm like, how can you do that? There's a party going on, you know? So I would say yes and no, but yeah, there's another reason why I wanted to write the book because there's so much stigma regarding the sex work industry. And yes, it is sex work, even though we don't provide sexual acts to customers. But we're selling the fantasy of sex. We're selling the fantasy of that, the
Yeah.
illusion, right?
It, oh, gee, I'm glad you led me into asking you this because now I'm finding a perfect spot. We just asked about the self-esteem of the sex workers, the gals, the dancers.
Hmm.
What about the guys that go in there? Is there anything? What is that model of the gentlemen, the guys that go in
Mm.
there? Is there anything that you can say to that? Do you think they had a self-esteem problem, or do they have this more of a problem of um, machismo is not the right word, but taking
I get
control,
it. Ego,
ego.
ego. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get that. I don't want a blanket statement, the customers
Yeah.
that come in. And in fact, I do say there is a part in the book, Face Value, about the top three or four types of customers. You have your married man, you have your college uh, kid, you have bachelor parties, you have general just somebody that's lonely and just wants affection and attention, and so there's all sorts. As many people that thumb through Pornhub are as diverse as the people that are
Gotcha.
in the strip clubs, in the strip bars, and the majority of them, honestly, I, I feel like they just want company. And if you're out and you're by yourself or with your buds and you want to see some beautiful women and maybe buy them a drink and talk with them, have at it, have a good time. Just treat them with respect.
So that is good to say because of the fact that now we have established, and I think that we know that whether you're a uh, dancer, a stripper, or you're the customer, the client that comes in. It could be any one of us. It doesn't matter. We don't have a look. You just
Yeah.
don't know whether you're an addict or a customer. A customer could be an addict as well. They could be addicted to going to those clubs. So again,
Hmm.
addiction encompasses everyone and everything. And as you were saying at the beginning, we just need to be able to look at it and understand that we've crossed that line and now we are an addict. Um,
Hmm.
you went through and you stopped dancing in 1996, was it?
Hmm. Yep.
Uh, what made you get out? And then let's go on to your book and why you really want to help people and erase any type of stigma.
Okay. Well, do you remember being in your late 20s and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 30? And then kind of taking stock. Like to me, the number 30, the age 30, for some reason, I had it in my head that I was supposed to be married with kids at a house and all these things. And here I am taking my clothes off for $1 in Waikiki. None of that was even on my radar. And I thought, okay, I think I was 28 years old. So when you're staring down the barrel of a new decade, and I had no college degree, like nothing to show for it except these party experiences. Um, that's sort of the genesis of what made me really take a look at my life. And also, I was so burnt out. I was so tired of waking up hungover and sometimes waking up not knowing where I parked my car, which is shameful, really, really shameful. Uh, Sometimes waking up not knowing who was next to me. And all of those things, of course, I'm not blaming stripping at all, but it's just part of the life that I was living. And so in my young mind, I thought, well, I need to get off of this island. I need to start fresh. I need to move away from this life in order to create a new one for myself. And I did, but the addiction didn't go anywhere. And you'll have to read the rest in the book.
Oh, I love that, a cliffhanger. But you're right. You could take yourself out of that situation, out of the situation, but that addiction is inside of you. It goes with you no matter where you go. You can't run away from it. So if somebody out there is listening or watching and they're thinking, well, all I need to do is leave my surroundings, that can help. But you got to understand, if you're an addict, that's part of your baggage. It's your luggage and it's with you. So
So true. One of the first lines in one of the chapters is everybody has baggage. People that say otherwise are smuggling their carry-on.
I
They
love
just
that.
are. Everybody has baggage. So your baggage will find you. Your baggage will find you. If you think you're just throwing it off at the curb and flying off the island or flying away from your hometown, it will find you. And that's what happened with me. So yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And think about it this way: if you're calling it baggage and you're on a plane, the bag doesn't go and find you, really. You go looking for it. So
Mm,
if
hmm
you leave it, you're gonna go look for it until you've fixed it, or until you've emptied that bag. So
And also too, when you're not focusing on, when I should say when we as a whole don't focus on our why, on the reasons why we have this baggage, sometimes we don't even see it as baggage. It's just our it's our normal. It's not even our new normal. It's just the toxic life that we're living is all that we know.
mm,
In other words, I was dating somebody once that was a very, very poor choice. But in my mind, I didn't know any different because that's how I was raised. The template of my childhood was narcissistic abuse and all of those things. But I'll never forget, I was in therapy and I was talking to my therapist about all of a sudden, this is after the toxic partner and I broke up, everything was very quiet and it was very unsettling. My phone wasn't blowing up. There were no fires to put out. And she said, "You're experiencing peace." I thought, wow, okay, that's new. So some people don't even recognize that they even have the baggage until they start really unpacking it, if we want to
mhm.
stick with this metaphor, right?
Yeah. But going with that, you're right. I mean, oftentimes, and then sometimes I think the problem that people have, and this again is just kind of generalizing,
Mm,
is when you get to that point, it's peace and it's quiet. You may think there's something wrong because
yes.
you're not. That's not what you're used to.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and you want to look out, you want to find the trauma.
mhm,
You want to find the drama and the trauma because that's all you know. And if that is all you know, then that means that's home. So for me, my home, my North Star was toxic. So I had to unravel all of that hard wiring in my brain because um, abuse isn't love, and I'm
right.
talking verbal, physical. That's not love, but I thought it was. I thought that they love me so much that they want to control me, that kind of a thing. Do you know what I mean? Like that warped type of thinking. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
mhm.
You know, what's striking me right now is at, at the beginning you were saying, you're not a counselor type person, you're not a psychiatrist or anything. You don't have a degree in any of that, right?
Oh, heck no.
And
No.
the way you're explaining and telling us about everything is real world situations and real world experiences. And that's what we need, I think, as a society as a whole, to
Mm,
hear something from somebody who has experienced this, if we want to call it trauma, or whatever we want to call it. You've experienced it firsthand, and you're letting us know this is how I handled it. This is what happened to me. Now, whether it's the same for all of you, there's a similarity in there somewhere that you can relate to. And I love what you're telling us right now. It's um
thank you.
it's eye-opening. So
Thank you.
so go get the book, people.
Yeah. Oh, let me show you. Can I show you?
Yeah.
All right.
Face
So here,
value, right?
is it backwards or can you see it?
It's right. It's the right way for
It's
me
the
on
right
my.
way. Okay. Because I'm very excited that I just learned about the whole mirroring thing. Did you know
Oh,
about that in the video? You can switch it
yeah.
from mirror to that. I'm like, oh, no, it's not backwards. So yeah, face value, which is a really not so tongue-in-cheek way of saying your beauty is not just on the external, it is the internal. And from working the pole to bearing my soul, that's the name of the book. So a lot of fun 80s photos, a lot of fun stories. There's trauma in there, but make no mistake, it was one of the best decades of my life. I know I'm only 54 and I don't know how many more I have to go, but man, I have to say my 20s were a lot of fun, even though it was wrapped in a blanket of toxicity.
I will say 80s was the best decade, and there will never be anything like
Yes.
the 80s. You
The
know,
music. The music.
oh, oh, the music. Well, strike this, but I'm gonna say it: sex, drugs, and rock and roll in the 80s.
Yeah, I know. It sounds so weird to say, but it's true. We didn't have fentanyl. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have YouTube. All the things that, can contribute to those, oh my gosh, those shame spirals now, because everybody makes mistakes when they're young. I mean, heck, we all make mistakes now. But back, when we're in our youth, there was something magical about that time for us as Gen Xers because we were in the moment.
Hmm.
You can walk onto an elevator and, you know, now everybody's looking at their phones. Nobody's making eye contact. So yeah, the sex, drugs, rock and roll, that's a template for it was an amazing time.
It was. I'm gonna add one more word to that: debauchery, because it was.
Yes.
Hey, if
Yeah.
you're in LA, if you well, I won't even have to say that, but if you're anywhere in West Coast or extreme East Coast America at that time,
Yes.
you would experience sex, drugs, rock and roll, and debauchery. And the difference I think it seems like is that maybe perhaps more people owned up to whatever they did or the mistakes perhaps back then.
Mm,
I don't know if
maybe.
owning up to it is the right word, but um, there was no, there was still shaming, but there wasn't shaming like there is today, like the kids go through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and perhaps it could be because of, you were saying we didn't have the internet and things like that back at that time, or at least it's not like it is now, where Johnny and Susie went to a club and Susie hooked up with another guy. Back then it would be just like, do you see what that did? Today it's snap, snap, snap on the
You're
phone, and
right.
all 2 seconds later it's up there. But wait a second. She actually didn't hook up with him. He was going through some traumatizing situation and she was just comforting him. But
Yep.
now the fire has started and everybody is going
Yep.
in the wrong direction.
Yep. It's true. And the internet is forever,
Yeah.
it's when it's out there, it's out there. But, and on the same lines too, you were just talking about how um, uh, people can be misperceived. Is that the word I'm looking for? Misconstrued online, right? But back in our day, we didn't have that. And then, everybody Googles. I'm a garcheologist. I created that word because I call it garcheology because I Google everything. And back when we didn't have the internet or Google, we would just say, "Oh yeah, who played that? What was that movie called?" It's okay, and then we just moved on.
Yeah.
Like now, I have to know. I go online and I'm like, I have to know. So yeah, interesting differences between then and
Yes.
now for sure. And I'm glad, I'm glad I'm a Gen Xer, man. I'm very happy not to be in those tender ages of 13, 14, 15 during this time. This is tough.
It is.
Yeah.
So with the experiences that you went through and, self-esteem and things like that, and we're talking now about 13, 14-year-old,
hmm
mainly girls, what kind of advice can you give them as far as building or having self-esteem, self-worth for themselves?
Don't compare yourself. Do not compare yourself. There's only one you, and your flaws are your flavor. Your flaws are what is part of who you are. And instead of looking at something that you maybe you think you have a big nose or you have crooked teeth, like I have my bottom crooked teeth, instead of thinking that it's a flaw, just think of it as your flavor. This is part of who you are. It makes you part of who you are. And don't think that um, the grass is always greener because I'm telling you, 95% of the time, it's astroturf,
Mm,
right? It's not real.
yeah.
It's fabricated, it's embellished. So if you focus so much on other people rather than how you can make yourself a better person, and beauty obviously comes from within, and we know that through age. But for young women, my number one piece of advice is just to not compare yourself and to follow the examples of people that are older than you. And if you don't have a healthy template as a parental unit, uh, try and latch on to someone who has a sense of self-worth. Don't surround yourself with shallow people. Surround yourself with people who are the real deal.
Those are all really, really good and helpful tips, Christine. One thing I want to also add on that too, with what you're saying is it is hard not to compare yourself or to look at somebody else and say, "Oh my gosh, he or she is so good looking," or they have this or they have that, and I wish I was like that. The one thing to keep in mind is what you're seeing is one thing. We are
hmm
all made up of more than just one thing. So you might take a look at that movie star, rock star, or somebody down the street and say, you know, she's so beautiful and I'm such a whatever. I wish I was like that. Well, guess what? You don't know what her other qualities are because you're just looking at that one thing and saying to yourself, I wish I was like that. And like
We're
you said,
all in recovery from something.
mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. As you said, if you say you have no baggage,
You're
you're
smuggling your carry-on.
when you carry on. I love it.
Yep.
Is there it's well back to your book again. You could pick up your book face value
hmm
on Amazon. It's probably the easiest place to pick that up, right? Again, the
hmm
full title is Face Value From Working the Pole to Bearing My Soul.
Yep.
So by Christine MacDonald, not
hmm
McDonald.
Oh,
So
thank you so much for saying that.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Um, but Amazon probably be the quick and
Yep.
easiest way to go to and get your
hmm
book, right?
Yep. And
Uh,
it just came out on hard copy, so you have your choice. You can have audio will be coming. It's not yet. It's all based on sales. So right now you have paperback, you have the Kindle version, and then you have hard copy.
okay. Super. Yeah. Who gets hardbacks now?
I
Collectors.
know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so
Uh,
true.
uh, we kind of touched on this, and I just want to ask you just this one last question, if you don't mind, is have have you moved past the stigma of being a stripper, your own mental stigma, your own mental um, self-worth and value? Have you moved past? Are you doing okay? And because you are a professional career woman now, you have a tremendous smile on your face, so you got to be super happy with everything.
I
So
am. I am.
good.
Thank you for asking. I have no stigma anymore. I have no shame anymore because of the people that I have surrounded myself with. And when I share my story, of course, now it's very public. But I
Hmm.
wrote my book. It took me 15 years to write, and that was a component. There was shame involved. I was working for a different company that I'm working for now. I'm an executive assistant for anyone that's curious. And I was so worried that I would get found out, like
Hmm.
caught. I felt like I was going to get caught because I had so much shame because it's sex work and there's a lot of people out there that have this blanket opinion and idea, and everyone has a right to their opinions. I don't have that anymore. And I don't know if it's because the book is out or if I'm just 15 years older. I think it's a combination of both. Because I think after you reach 50, for me personally, I'm 54. I'm going to be 55 on November 9th. I'm very excited to hit that double nickel. And aging is a privilege. And I honestly did not think I was going to see that age. So I'm very, very happy to be turning another year older. But as soon as you reach that age, for me, I just don't care. If you don't like something about me, that's okay. I'm not for you, and maybe you're not for me. But yeah, so to answer your question, I'm such a long-winded person. I'm sorry. I just don't have the energy to worry about what other people think.
There's so many lessons to be had, and to be learned from everything that you're saying. Because every time you say something, and I'll say you're a long-winded dancer, but I'm not saying you're long-winded. There is always something, at least all of a sudden, is in my head. It's like, wow, there is a lesson right there.
Thank you.
So, you know, if your book is anything like with what you're saying, there is so much that people are going to learn about themselves, not about you, but about themselves. So, um,
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been a joy. It's been so much fun to talk with you. And to piggyback on what you're saying, I am receiving private messages on social media from housewives, from some women in their 60s, from young spicy dancers that are currently working in the clubs. That's a whole nother conversation. They call me Auntie Kiki and they say, thank you for not judging us. Thank you for not, it's just the book is touching people in a way that is so, what's the word I'm looking for? Validating for me because it's a unique story, but the message is universal. It's all about
yes.
self-worth. It's all about self-worth. Yeah.
And we have to understand that it's not an overnight cure.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, 15 years later, you're feeling
Yeah.
great. It could take you 2 years, 2 months, 15 years. There's no
Yeah.
time limit. As long as you're making an effort and working towards that goal,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
you're on your way.
Yep.
So,
Be a good person.
yeah.
Yeah.
Christine, thank you very much. And again, it's Christine MacDonald,
Mm-hmm.
MAC. So you can find Christine McDonald's book. Amazon's the best place to go. And again, it's Face Value From Working the
Working
Pole
the
to
pole.
Bearing My Soul.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.